I have. Yeah, I've got, I don't know, I've got a handful of apps, but I tried to start with my simplest possible ones. And, I've got one that it's a matching game for words and it might say bed and have a picture of a bed. And then there might be four words. One says BED and one says like fork. Click, tap it. And that's basically the whole thing, right? It's pretty simple. The accessibility things, well, you think, well, where do you start with this? Well, what does accessibility mean? If you go to, Apple's got this accessibility nutrition label when you go to App Store Connect and set up things for your app. What accessibility things does your app support? Number one is there's VoiceOver where it'll read, as you move your finger around the screen and touch different items, it'll read them to you and like it'll say, oh, this is a stop button and this is play or whatever. There's another feature called voice control, which is, maybe you can see the screen just fine, but you're saying, hey,
yeah. So starting with those two, how did you attack this problem of making sure that you met those accessibility needs to properly click those buttons on App Store Connect?
So the first thing I did is I turned the feature on, which is what I would recommend. So I turn on VoiceOver, and when you turn on VoiceOver, make sure you know how to get out of VoiceOver, and then you start trying to use the app that way. And so you do that, and you say, okay, well, if I'm moving my finger around like this, can I operate this app? And some of the things are super easy, but other things that aren't. I think we talked about this on the previous one of the prior episodes. If you have a button or a thing that's not a button acts like a button, so it responds to a tap, then it might not have the right label on it. If you didn't set up an accessibility label for that item, it wouldn't know what to call it. It's just an image as far as it knows. So you have to go in there and say, oh, this is robot voice, or this is chipmunk voice, or whatever. So that's the VoiceOver. Voice control is pretty similar. It's all mostly about having good labels on things. In some cases, like what would the user what would they call this if it's not obvious? Like in the example of the voice, they might call it chipmunk, but they also might want to just say next voice. So you can add things like next voice, previous voice.
And what gave you the confidence to say, yes, the app is done? How did you know that you were done voice control?
That's a good question, Dan. I tested it a lot. That's probably not the best answer, but that's my answer. I also went into the App Store Connect and just kind of said, well, what are the categories here and what are the things they want me to support? Those were two of them. Another big one is a dynamic type. So you can say bigger sizes of text. There's another one called bold text. And there's another one called increased contrast. So increased contrast is kind of a cool one because right now today in your Xcode, you can set in your assets, you can set colors up there, right? And you can say, well, here's my color when I'm in light mode and here's my color when I'm in dark mode, or any in dark mode or whatever. Well, you can also make another pair of those in that same color asset that are the standard and high contrast versions of that color. So in that case, if you're using the asset catalog, let's say for, light mode and dark mode, or even if you weren't, you could also make like in that same color asset, you can make a high contrast version. And then in the system, when someone goes to accessibility and says increase contrast, then it'll just automatically happen. You don't have to do anything in your code. If you use like system colors and system fonts, like if you just say your font is like .body and .headline and things like that, it'll usually just sort of do the thing automatically.
See, that's what makes me confident, but maybe complacent, because I use system fonts, I use system colors, and so I'm like, wow, this is should, which is in italics,
right,
be pretty safe for accessibility. But I wouldn't I don't have the confidence to go through those accessibility labels and confidently click yes, this app satisfies VoiceOver, voice control, and various font settings. So
now and then there are a few easy ones there too that were not hard. Let's see. Well, one is dark mode. That's considered they have that listed under accessibility also. Okay, here's another one. Differentiate without color alone. That is the one that, like, if you have like a toggle button, it'll put a 1 and a 0 on it also. So it's not just the color that you're seeing that's different. Like if you couldn't see the green in the toggle button, for example, if it just still looks gray to you, like, well, which way is on? I don't know. It's hard to tell, But in most cases, like in most of my apps, if I have a blue button and a green button, for example, I probably also have something that's different on the button. Most likely, in most places I found one place in one app so far that didn't have that. I had a graph in my mortgage calculator that had 2 lines, and they looked, they were just two different colors. One was green, one was blue. So I made one of them dashed, and that solves that one. And you have there's an accessibility setting for things like differentiate without color alone, and you can obviously enable that when someone turns that option on. But you can also just have your app just differentiate without color alone already, so then you don't have to do anything special. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you're, like it said in the graph case, if if you want to have multiple colored lines, you could also make them dashed or dotted or things like that.
I see. Okay.
And you could make the choice of only showing them when people turn on that option or not. But those are the main things. It's it's the contrast, differentiate without color, dynamic type sizes. When you go on your smallest device and you put your font to the biggest possible accessibility size, it's not going to look pretty, but can you actually see all the things?
Right. And that one is I see that when I'm traveling for work in airports and on airplanes, and some people have their fonts up pretty high.
And they're kind of used to it usually. Like they just scroll around and they're like, oh yeah, my mom reads her messages that way at some 96 point font or whatever. And I don't know how you could tell what's on that screen, but she does it and she scrolls around and does it. But if your app doesn't, like if you have things where you have fixed height areas or things that don't line wrap or things that don't get bigger or things that don't scroll, that's where you run into problems. So, and that was what I've had to fix on some of these that, were screens I didn't even consider having a scroll view wrapping them before, because there's not that much content there. But when you blow it up to as big as it can go, then now it needs to scroll. So,
on a scroll view is nice because in a SwiftUI scroll view, there's a modifier on that, and off the top of my head, I think it's called scroll bounce behavior.
I think that's what it's called. Yep.
Yeah, and you can have it say it's like as needed or
based on size is the one you're talking about.
Based on size, yes.
Yep.
And it's very nice because I've shied away from scroll views because this screen doesn't always need to scroll. It might if you have something larger that maybe is dynamic that appears on screen. But I don't want it to scroll where there's nothing to scroll. And I think it was only recently, maybe in the last couple of years, that was a new modifier on the SwiftUI scroll views. But I make sure I put that in because if somebody does increase font size, then that screen may need to scroll.
Yeah, I agree. So that's the main accessibility things. They're really not that bad. You do have to spend some time with it, but it actually went, kind of better than I thought so far on the ones that I've done. I'm on